Everyone's first days, weeks, sometimes even months are painful on the bass, both because your fingers are actually sore, but also because there are so many things to learn before you can even start playing along to your favorite track. So today we'll go over 10 super common techniques that'll get you having fun on the bass in no time. And of course, we've created a beautiful PDF download with all of the tab and notation to help you follow along. So make sure you grab that down in the description. I'll be using my trusty $400 Squire with its original strings, and it's had zero work done. No fancy stuff, we're going budget and attainable today. We're gonna start with the simplest and most common technique, good old fingerstyle. Feel Good Inc. by the Gorillaz is to this day a masterpiece, and lucky for us, it has a badass yet simple bass line. It's not too fast, it's short, and it's repetitive. It's like it was made to be everyone's first bass line. Before we start, the actual tuning of this song is a little whack. It's something in between a half step and a whole step, and even that whole step, well, it's tuned to 450 Hertz instead of our usual 440. But to simplify it, we're just gonna play it in regular standard tuning. You'll see a lot of bassists use their index and middle finger to pluck the strings, and we'll get there in a little bit. But for now, let's just start by plucking with our index finger only. But if you're already comfortable using both, feel free to do that. The fretboard is vast, and unlike on the piano, we've got the same notes occurring multiple times across the fretboard. For instance, your open D string can be played here, here, here. I mean, come on! This means we have various options on where and how to play a line. Often you get to simply go by what just feels most comfortable to you, but you'll notice that even though it's the same note in the same octave, the tone is slightly different. Listen again. Luckily for us, this line is pretty tight together on the fretboard. To keep things even simpler, we'll make sure to be using all the open strings that we can. And if this is all going a little bit too fast and you feel like you still have a couple of gaps, we just released the Beginner Journey Pathway over on the SBL Academy. Head over there, you'll be in the incredible hands of the great Ian Martin Allison, and you get to try it for free. Next up, Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, obviously Flea on bass. And we're gonna stick to fingerstyle, but we're gonna add not one, not two, but 3 additional techniques. Don't worry, with a little bit of practice, you will get it in no time. With a little concept called finger per fret. So if you watch closely, my fingers are never leaving their designated fret. You can still play this line with one finger, but I do encourage you to start adding your middle finger. I omitted a pretty significant part of that line there, but before I get to that, let's make sure we're comfortable with the stretch we're having to do. Your fingers might want to pop up when you're not using them, but try and fight that urge and keep them as close to the fingerboard because the next step will require some finger independence. If you watch my right hand closely, you'll notice that I'm actually only plucking the very first note of that trill. The rest of it is happening over on my left hand. I pluck the D, but then instead of doing this, because that sounds duh, I'm actually hitting the next note, the E, with my ring finger. That's called a hammer-on. The name speaks for itself. And right after smacking that note, I actually pull down the string with my ring finger while making sure I'm still pressing down on the D with my index finger, giving us the pull-off, and thus completing the trill. Side note, this might feel really unnatural because our ring fingers generally have some serious codependency issues, so it might take a little bit of work for you to loosen this little guy up. A good exercise to help with this is to do the hammer-on and pull-off combo with all of your fingers, and remember to keep your fingers close to the fretboard. Alright, we've got the building blocks together. Now let's take this line slowly. If you feel like your ring ring finger doesn't have enough strength to do this, you can totally combo your ring finger with your pinky and do that pull off together. And if the hammer-on pull-off bit is slightly too hard, you can always go back and practice the finger per fret thing to help strengthen your fingers. Next up, Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine with the great Tim Comerford on bass. But before we start, this track 2 is actually not played in standard tuning. We're gonna be in drop D tuning, so instead of having EADG, we're gonna have DADG.
Killing in the name of...
Okay, you're making progress with fingerstyle, you're working through hammer-ons and pull-offs, and if you need it, you know how to do the finger per fret. But sometimes the finger per fret thing might just make things unnecessarily hard. So instead, we're actually going to be shifting mid-riff. Shift. Shift back. But that's not actually what I want to talk about in this tune. Because what's that funky stuff happening there in the middle? Is that even a note? It sure is. It's a dead note. I'm serious. This isn't me being dramatic. This is actually called a dead note. Or some people call it a ghost note. And it kind of makes sense because you can't really hear the note. It's just like a slight rhythmic hit. And this hit can be achieved in a few ways. Some of it is preference and some of it will be dictated by pure practicality. Method number 1, you can lay your hand over the fret of your choosing without pressing down completely and pluck. Obviously, if you press too hard, you're gonna get a full note, so just lightly touch. Method number 2, you can smack the string with your right hand to achieve a similar sound. This one's especially useful if you need it to be loud, but it can get pretty impractical if you're extremely busy with, you know, using your right hand to pick and stuff. All right, let's take this real slow and I'll shout out all the techniques that we're using. We got a hammer on there and it's immediately followed by 2 16th note dead notes. And the way I play it is that I actually use both method 1 and 2 because I'm hitting the first 16th note and I'm plucking the second one. Check it out, real slow. You could go to the open D next, but I actually prefer taking it here on the 5th fret and then taking the open low D to shift down and get my final hammer on. And if you want it to sound real hardcore, just turn on a little bit of drive. Let's tune back to standard tuning and tackle our next track, Back Pocket by Vulfpeck with the absolute insane Joe Dart on bass. Joe's got the most punchy and short sound in maybe bass history, and one way that I've managed to mimic this sound is by muting the strings. I don't know if that's exactly what he's doing, but it'll get you pretty damn close. So for some reason, YouTube really wants to block this track. And when I say this track, I mean this undisclosed track by Chris Brown. If the track has in fact been blocked, you will not be seeing the playthrough of the song, but I highly recommend you check it out anyway. The link is up here, and we'll be skipping straight to the breakdown of the song. And in the off chance that YouTube realized the errors of its ways,
You didn't see anything.
there are so many ways for you to achieve a muted sound on the bass. Let's start with the easiest way to do this, a sponge. I'm just gonna be using my fret wrap, and I'll put it right here near the bridge, and voila. Now you can play as you would any other fingerstyle line, and you're on your way. But what if you don't have a sponge handy? You'll be using your index finger to press down on the note, and the rest of your fingers to slightly mute it by simply closing your hand and lightly touching the strings as you play. Hear the difference? And to get that octave, you can either mute both, or you can simply mute, play super short, and go back down and mute. Another way you can mute is by using the palm mute technique with your right hand. Slightly angle your hand and have your palm touch the strings just in front of the bridge. You can play with the area a bit, but the closer to the neck you get, the more dead the note's gonna sound. All right, let's pivot a bit over to the pick, aka the plectrum. Couple of basics before we start. Hold your pick like this, parallel to the string, and then you can either do a downstroke, or an upstroke, or a combination of the two. And a combination is exactly what we are going to be doing on this next track, Spider by System of a Down. This is a great track to start off your picking journey because you don't have to deal with solving the whole inevitable issue of ringing strings. Because we're actually intentionally letting everything ring. The line itself is quite simple. Let me show you how I picked this, but feel free to spend some time with it and see what you prefer. I downstroke all of the D string notes, but I upstroke all of the G string notes. And if you want to give yourself an extra challenge, you can hit the low C, or E string, at the beginning of every phrase. Of course, this is just one instance of picking, but a great way to continue your pick journey is to take any song you already know and play it with a pick. Try including things like muting or string crossing, like we just did with the low C. And that'll help you really flesh out the skill. We're ramping it up, we're going slap, and we're going Wooten. I know, Victor Wooten, Sharon, that's not appropriate for someone starting off on the bass. I hear you, but wouldn't it be kind of cool to whip out like a Wooten line in front of your friends? I obviously agree, so I say let's make it happen. Beginning riffs of this song, in my opinion, are actually great for starting off with slap bass because they use some of the most common and basic moves. Okay, let's start with positioning. I like to have my thumb almost parallel to the strings, but you can have it pointed slightly upward, or if you want to play more like Fleet, you can point it down. Take some time, try them all, and see what comes most naturally to you. You're going to use this side of your thumb to literally hit the string. Disclaimer, if this is your absolute first time playing slap, it might not sound amazing on your first couple of tries, and it might feel like torture because, ow. We've all been there. If you're doing it right and you're doing it consistently, that part will be over real quick. Slap will often come with its good buddy, the pop, or the pluck, which is simply hooking your finger into the string. You can use your index or you can use your middle finger, it's up to you. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna pluck it. It doesn't take a lot of effort. A little goes a long way here. All right, we're actually gonna start with the second riff that he plays. It's essentially just octaves slapped and plucked. Let's take it slow. See, it's not too hard. Of course, the line goes on to get, well, let's just say we won't be looking at that today. But what we will be looking at is the previous section. It's a bit of a step up, so feel free to keep working on this first bit and getting a hang of the octaves. And when you're ready, we can dive into the next section. The dreaded double thumb. Maybe this thought process will help you a little bit. It definitely helped me. In essence, you're just gonna substitute your pick with your thumb. You're gonna go through the string once, landing on the bottom string, and then pulling back up through the string with the top of your thumb. And voila. And this section of the track actually lends itself perfectly as a double thump exercise because you're just going straight 8 notes. And you already know the notes from the previous riff. We're gonna ditch the octaves and we're gonna go with that straight 8 note pattern. And if you really want to make this into an exercise, I say let's move it across all strings. Why, but for some reason harmonics are always considered not a beginner technique, which baffles me to be completely honest because, I mean, slap? There are 2 kinds of harmonics that we can create on the bass, natural harmonics, which is what we'll be looking at today, and artificial harmonics, a topic for a different video. When you play a string on the bass, it vibrates and creates sound, right? But if you lightly touch the string at certain points, the key word being lightly, you can make the string vibrate in shorter sections, thus creating harmonics. Think of the string like a jump rope. If you shake the rope on one end, it moves in a simple wave. But if you hold the rope lightly in the middle while shaking it, you'll see two smaller waves instead. And that's essentially what's happening with your bass string. The points where you touch must divide the string into equal parts, like halves, thirds, or quarters. And the shorter the vibration, the higher the sound. So by lightly touching the string at these special points, you too can create beautiful bell-like tones known as natural harmonics. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And with that, I present to you Pearl Jam's Indifference.
I will light the match this morning, so I won't be alone. Watch as she lies silent, for soon that will be gone.
I am using a pick for this, and sometimes it really is easier to get the harmonic to sound more with a pick. Compared to the things I've thrown at you today, like hammer-on, pull-offs, slap, this track's actually going to be quite breezy. There's a little bit of string crossing that we'll have to deal with, but thankfully it's not too fast and it's super repetitive. I'm going to do a quick run-up with the AE, immediately followed by both 5th fret harmonics. I'm exactly where I would usually play my note. I'm just hovering over the note. And if you're not in that spot, you might actually find other harmonics. But for now, play the ones closest to your fret. Almost the same run, we're just gonna do AD. And that's the whole line. I don't know if he's doing that dead note in between there. Someone is doing something, I decided I'd join. Alright, I will finally accept someone giving me crap for the next track, because I promised you 7 tracks and this is the 8th, and also it is in no way appropriate for this video. Or is it? Don't Give Hate a Chance by Jamiroquai is without a doubt a challenge, but it is using a significant number of techniques that we've talked about today. So this one's extra credit for you to come back to when you feel ready. And to make it a little bit more attainable, I've got 2 versions for you, a simplified one and a boss level one. Follow along with the tabs that you so diligently downloaded earlier, and let's do this. One reason this track is so challenging is because it requires an extreme amount of dexterity and speed with both of your hands. So to make this more attainable, let's A, slow it down, and B, adjust some of the trickier sections and replace them with the things we've learned today. Instead of playing these super fast notes at the beginning, we're just gonna thump it octave pluck like we did with Sinister Minister. And then we're gonna switch to fingerstyle. Hammer-ons incoming. If you look at my right hand, I'm barely plucking any of these. A little bit more fingerstyle, and then we're going back to thump. Let's try it all together, slowly. To really nail either of these versions, you're going to want to start off really slow and don't up the speed until you're really happy with the tone and until you're not feeling a crazy amount of strain on your hands, because if there's strain, it will only get worse the faster it gets. Remember to relax your hands. Alright, ready or not, we're gearing up for boss level. My name is Sharon Reynolds. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and show some love down in the comments.